Hi and welcome. I am Tina Holland and I am a program specialist with Washoe County School District's 21st Century Learning Division in Reno, Nevada. In this workshop, we will be discussing how to effectively manage your classroom technology. And before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of background about my personal experience with classroom technology. In 2009, I was awarded a very generous $33,000 grant from the EL Court Foundation to bring laptops and Wi-Fi access point into my classroom and some other technology. And then it was really neat because at the same time, I was also chosen to be part of the Nevada Pathway to 21st Century Learning Project. And through that brought iPods and veneer probeware into my science classroom. And I was so excited to have technology. Before that, I had bought my own laptop and projector, and I knew that I was right kind of on that cusp there. I knew that I wanted the technology. I knew that I wanted it for my students. I knew that students were more engaged when I used the technology, but I really didn't fully understand what I was getting into. And so when I did get the technology, I had to learn really quick in order to have the technology be a success in my class. And I'm going to admit that the first year of having all this technology in my class, I'm going to totally admit that it was an epic fail because I really didn't understand the whole concept of using the technology for learning. And how to implement it, and then also just the management aspect of it, I was completely unprepared for. And so, in the course of my experience, I learned many things the hard way that I definitely had wished I'd known before I rolled out all of my technology. And and if you're new to technology, and as I was, managing that technology can be very overwhelming. And oftentimes, because of this overwhelm, people can get very turned off and completely shut down. And then many of these wonderful technology tools will end up collecting dust in the boiler room somewhere or sitting somewhere unused. And then, of course, with technology changing so much, they become dated, and pretty soon all this money that was spent on technology just ends up sitting and going to complete waste. So hopefully by watching this workshop and learning from my experiences, it will save you a lot of heartache and your technology will be used effectively. So go ahead and watch the video here. This is actually a video of my classroom. And as you're watching the video, I want you to kind of try to notice things that need to be managed. And then I also want you to notice what technology management elements or strategies that I had in place with managing them. So go ahead and watch the video, and then I will see you back in a moment. So what's the objectives for this workshop? Well, by participating in this workshop, you will learn ideas for successfully rolling out your technology with your students. You will also get some ideas for device check-in and out and keeping track of the technology in your classroom. You will also receive ideas for developing custom procedures and best practices for managing the technology in your classroom. And we are going to talk about how to effectively use technology in your classroom by looking at the use of technology for learning, which is one of from our framework of 21st century learning competencies, and is one of the dimensions. And lastly, hopefully, by participating in this workshop, we can save technology from the boiler room and make your technology implementation smooth and easy. And so I have a question here that I want you to answer on Edpuzzle, and that is, do you have technology laying around your school that has ended up in quote unquote the boiler room? And you know what I mean when I say the boiler room. But what is that technology? And think about, why did it get forgotten? And so I want you to kind of give some thought about this. I think most schools have some amazing technology or old technology at this point laying around unused. And so kind of think about that, and then tell me why you feel it got forgotten. So I'm going to start from the very beginning as if you just received your technology and you get to take it out of the box. And if you already have your technology, that's fine. I mean, it's okay to start anywhere. But anyway, I'm just gonna, start right out of the box. So I took out my devices from my boxes, and the first thing I did was I numbered, and I numbered. I numbered everything, and these were numbers that I would constantly have to go over and redo. I never found anything that actually stayed on there real good because they were handled. But once I got covers on them and I protected the technology, then the numbers on the laptops were fine because I got clear covers. And we'll talk about that in a second. So I numbered everything. I numbered everywhere. I even numbered the size of the laptops and I numbered the cart as well. And this made it really easy for students to check in the laptops and check them out because they knew exactly where the laptops belonged when they were put away, and they knew exactly where they belonged when they went and got them. And then here is another picture of the numbering and of my laptops. I also numbered the chargers, and you can kind of see a little bit the numbers right here. And then there's numbers on the side of the chargers. So same thing, I think it is very important to number everything and to keep everything together. Here is an example of iPads, and this is a teacher who they used. She has a very unique numbering system, and I'll show you that in a second. But the cart is already numbered, which I think is really cool. That saves a lot of time, and that's great. What she would do is she had a pattern here where the students would she would have the iPads in groups, and so each group would have one of each of these colors of black, maroon, blue, red, and purple. And then you see again black, red, blue, or black, maroon, blue, red, purple. And so she had a pattern going here with just the colors of the iPad covers. And then what she did is she numbered the iPads by creating a wallpaper, and then the lock screen would be on, and the wallpaper number would be on there all the time. And the way that she created these wallpapers is she would go to the Pages program on the iPads and, of course, make a huge font number. And then she would take a screenshot of it, and then she would upload the screenshot to Google Site. And then she would download the screenshot onto the iPads as a desktop background. And so a lot of work, but a very clever idea. And actually, I'm going to have you go to a blog post by a gentleman whose name is Tony Vincent, and he has a blog that's called Learning in Hand, and he's really kind of the expert guru on iPads and iPods. But he has a whole bunch of wallpaper numbers that you can download for free from his site, which I think is pretty cool, and ones that he's already made. So I'm going to go ahead and have you take a look at Tony's blog post about numbering iPads or iPods using wallpaper numbers. The next thing I did was I invested quite a bit of money and time into protecting the technology. I knew from my own personal technology that I use at home, I knew that things could get could go bad very quickly and could get ruined very quickly. And so I invested in keyboard covers, and you can go to sites like eBay or Amazon. There's a site called monoprice.com or even newegg.com, and you can get cases and keyboard covers and things like that for pretty reasonably priced, pretty cheap. But the first thing I did is I put on a cover to protect the keyboard, and then I also bought a hardcover case to protect the actual laptop. I knew that at some point in using the laptops, it probably would get dropped or knocked off a table. I also knew at some point something might be spilled on it. And definitely, like with iPads, you would want to get some kind of screen protector. I didn't get screen protectors, but looking back on it now, I wish that I had also gotten screen protectors for the screens of the devices as well. And then another thing I did get it was I bought mice, And you can imagine 180 students a day all working with this trackpad here and what it would look like at the end of a year. And so I wanted to keep my technology nice. I didn't want to be without it, and I knew that I had to invest some effort and some money into protecting the technology. And I'm very, very grateful I did. There were several incidences where if it was not for the hardcover cases on it, or if it wasn't for the keyboard covers, the laptop would have been completely ruined. And when I say laptop, please just interject your own device here. I mean, all devices, it's pretty much the same in the management part of it. Okay, so another thing I did is I cut off all the labels from the box because the label had a lot of information on it that I needed, and this way I didn't have to write anything anywhere or transfer the information. It had the serial number, it had the model number, it also had the Wi-Fi access number on it. But I created a documentation binder, or you can create a spreadsheet as well. And then anytime I did anything with that particular device, if I updated it, I added software to it, if there was a problem with it and I had to call Apple tech support, whatever it was, I documented into this binder. And I highly recommend that you have some kind of documentation binder or spreadsheet for your devices to keep track of them and keep track of the things that are done to them, or if there's any repairs or anything that need to be done. Then I learned to create a golden ticket device. And keep in mind, all these things I learned the hard way. This was not my first year that I hit the track running. I mean, these things I developed over a period of several years. So, like I had said, when I first got all my technology, it was very overwhelming. And so keep in mind these are experiences that I learned the hard way, and hopefully you'll learn from my experiences. So one of the things I did is I created a golden ticket device, and I would take the device and I would think long and hard of all the software or apps or things that I wanted on that particular device for my students. For example, there was a lot of bookmarks that I might want on there. I might want the bookmark for our website, or the bookmark for Edmodo on there, or maybe some browsers on there. I had a lot of probeware, and so there was a probeware software that I wanted on my laptops. So sit and think about creating a golden ticket device, and then document everything that you want to have on that golden ticket device. Think about what the students are going to be using it for. Think about your content. Think about your units, and think about what you want students to have quick access to. And then one thing that's really neat with Apple is with this golden ticket device, whether it was an iPad or a laptop, or in my case, iPods, if you created a golden ticket device, you can run a backup. And what I would do is I would create this golden ticket device, and then I would restore all my other laptops or iPods to that golden ticket device. And so that's one of the things that's super cool with Apple is, you can create one device, and just by restoring the other devices to that backup, you will have all devices that are just exactly how you want them. And so it makes it very easy. I know even if you have a Chromebook or Surface or a PC-based device, you still should make a golden ticket device. You still should document and write down the things that you want on that device, and then proceed to put those on the other devices. Another thing that is important is to update the device before you add any software to it. I know there was a couple pieces of software I had that didn't function right once I ran an update, and so I had to actually update the software. So make sure that you run all updates on the devices, and you keep the devices updated. That's very important to do as you're adding software to it. And then some of the things that I didn't think of the first year that I got my technologies, I didn't think about downloading different browsers and the plugins to go with them. The Apple products come automatically with Safari, and in my opinion, Safari is not necessarily the best browser for things, as is Internet Explorer is not the best browser for things. So I really recommend that you have a couple browser options on your devices that students can use. And then along with the browsers, make sure your plugins are up to date. And I don't know how many times we would I would have them be doing some kind of interactive simulation or something like that, and then one of the devices, would be missing a plugin for Flash or for the Shockwave player, and I'd have to stop everything and get that plugin and stuff for them. So make sure, and again, you could do this with your golden ticket device. Make sure that you have the browsers that you want and you have all their plugins and stuff that you want. And then especially with Chrome Store. Chrome Store has so many just wonderful apps, free apps on it. And so these are things to consider that maybe you want those available through Chrome, that you want your students to have access to. Okay, the next thing that you need to think about is you need to think about your classroom. You need to think about your space. And these are things you need to think about before they ever get into a student's hands, and before you ever roll them out. But for example, power management. Power management was something I didn't even cross my mind. Power management. I remember the very first day I had the laptops, and the kids had the laptops, and it was just wonderful, and I was loving it, and it was great. And then by like fifth period, the laptops were done. And kids were scrambling to plug them in. I was lucky. I was in a science classroom, and so you can kind of see the plugs there in the back. But still, having 32 students standing in the back counter plugging in the laptops didn't work very well. And so I had to really step back, and I had to think about my room. I had to think about my room space. I had to think, what am I going to do when I need the kids to have power to it? And so what I did is I set up rows in my classroom, as you can see here, and then I purchased electrical strips, and there's kind of a long row going down the left-hand side here, and then I ran the wires down that row, and everything came up to the front of the room. And not necessarily, the most collaborative setup, but it was the only one that I could do in order to make sure that the laptops had power all day long for them. So power management is a big thing to think about. Space management is another thing to think about. When you have technology, you really want to be able to facilitate learning and not be that sage on the stage. And so you have to think about, how can I set up my room so my students can be collaborative and work in groups and be interactive with this technology. Also consider stations. Even if you're one-to-one, even if you're one-to-one, have stations, and your active board could be a station. It's just best practices, or a laptop area can be one station. But again, just things to consider. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you check out, there's 3 websites I have here, and just glance at them. I'm not looking for you to work with them right now, but know that they're available, and what they are is they're interactive classroom designer tools that you might want to consider using. And they're really neat. One of them, you can actually put in the dimensions of your room, and you could put in the furniture, and then this way you can kind of move things around and see what's going to be the effective use of space management for the technology that you have to make it the most effective learning environment for your students. Okay, so Classroom Rollout. One of the things with Classroom Rollout is it is very important to have a username convention on everything that the students have. On Apple products, I know on the iPads there's not really a login. On the MacBooks, you can have individual accounts for all your students. But and I know there's already a user convention for district login, but on accounts such as like Edmodo, for me, I had my own Google domain, and so my students had email addresses. We had an online textbook that we accessed. There was also Quia.com. I had several accounts, and once again, I learned the hard way when when I'm on Edmodo and I have no clue who a student is, or I'm on Quia and I'm seeing things like hot stuff number 1 or something like that, and I have no clue who the student is. So I came up with a username convention very quickly, and what worked really well for me is I would just have the student put their full first name and then no spaces, and then their full last name. And so their first name and their last name squished together. And then if there happened to be another student with the same exact first and last name, I would have one of the students add their either the year they were born or their age. Um, so username convention is very important, and then it's also important to have, and this is very helpful when you have external remote management software. But I would have my students play with the devices a bit, and especially they would play with like the photo booth. They would take selfies, and then with these selfies, I would have them upload them to their accounts. For example, Edmodo, you can put in your own picture. Quia, you can put in your own picture, and things like that. And so not only did it help the students to just get comfortable with the device and playing with it, but then they got to do something that they love doing anyway at home, and I knew exactly who they were by having their picture connected to their account. And so the more personalized the device or the account can be, I found that the more respect the student was going to have for it. So I allowed the students to play with the device. I actually once I checked out the numbers and such to the students, and we got all the accounts set up and everything. I gave a couple class periods just to have the students play around with the device and get to know it. And one of the things that was really neat is if you are not comfortable with just letting them loose on the device, is you can have kind of a more guided playtime. Maybe you could provide a scavenger hunt of fun tasks that they have to complete with the device to help them get to know the device. But I had students playing with taking selfies, and if any of you know anything about photo booth, it can be just such a hoot. It can be so funny because it does all kinds of things with pictures. I would have them find wallpapers to personalize their desktop backgrounds, or Google Images. Of course, they had to be appropriate, and to connect their accounts, they could customize their browsers. So there was all kinds of things that I would have them do to try to personalize their device as much as possible. And if you have devices where the students really are not able to do a lot of personalization on them, you might want to consider maybe even external personalization or something, because I found that the more a student personalized their device and made it feel like it was theirs, there was more buy-in and they took better care of them. All right, so here is a picture of my classroom. And one of the things, again, I learned super quick is to have a procedure for everything, and to let the students know exactly of what is expected to them. I did talk about numbering devices earlier, and along with numbering the devices, I also had numbers on the desks. And the number on the desk, I would use that as like an initial startup to check out devices with students that corresponded to the desk numbers. So at the beginning of the year, I would have my seating chart, the desks would be numbered, and then wherever that student was sitting would also correspond to what laptop number they would be using. And they would keep the same number for the entire year. Even if they moved seats or they ended up in a different seat, a different number seat, it didn't matter. They would still keep that same number of laptop. And so it's very important to have procedures for everything. There should be procedures for checking the device in, for checking the device out. I had special procedures for checking the device back in at the end of the day, and compared to, let's say, other class periods. The students should know how to carry the device. The students knew that they were to always carry the device with both hands and basically hug the device to themselves. One of the most dangerous time for devices is when you have 30 students all over the classroom trying to get their device, and students are holding them with one hand or they're far from their body. This is a time where where devices end up getting dropped or pushed out of a hand accidentally. And so you definitely need to let the students know that they have to hug their device, when they carry it. Um, you should have some kind of procedure for what the student should do if you're talking to them or giving them directions or you're giving them examples. And for me, when I was talking to the students knew that they would just shut their laptop. And if you happen to be in, let's say, a computer lab or you have desktops, you can just simply tape like construction paper, a colored sheet of construction paper that will act as a flap on the desktop. And then if you're talking, students know they just bring that flap over. And then when they get to go back to their activity, they can just put the flap back up. And so, I mean, we know as teachers that the most important thing for any classroom is management and being consistent. I did spend the first few months of school being pretty super tough and strict. And once I kind of had everybody, whipped into shape, so to speak, I could kind of back off a little bit by winter break as students learn the procedures. And I also learned too that if you are slacking with procedures, if you're not paying attention and you're letting students kind of push those boundaries with procedures, then the students are also going to slack off and they're going to push back on those boundaries. And so being consistent, having procedures for everything has a huge payoff. Okay, having an acceptable policy or technology agreement is very important. And even though the district has one, it's important to create and customize one that specifically fits with your technology and classroom. And this should be signed by both the student and the parent. It should also be kept on file somewhere. And a copy of the agreement should be available to students to access at all times. I had mine up online on my website. But some things that you want to consider before creating your technology user agreement is number one, be very careful with the language you use and the references you make to give your technology agreement authority. Like for example, putting a rule in there that is saying it is district policy or it's not a good idea, or referring to that the district is backing up your technology agreement. Be very careful with that because it is not district policy, it is your policy. And then also try to keep the language positive and use I statements to help promote personal ownership and responsibility. Um, Try to keep the language positive. What I mean by that is telling the students what they can do with the technology, not what they can't do with it. For example, instead of saying do not eat or no food or drink around the laptop, or students will not eat or drink around the laptops, you could say, I will protect my laptop from any liquid spills or food particles. So you can turn those negative do not or no's into I statements that are positive. And another thing is keep it simple. That's really huge. I know when looking back on my first technology user agreement, I am pretty embarrassed actually looking back on it. I think I must have had like 40 or 50 different rules in there, and when you have like 40 or fifty different rules, that's completely ridiculous and it's ineffective. I mean, students aren't going to remember all that. And so what I did is I whittled it down and I came up with about 10 top rules that pretty much cover everything. And I kept the statements positive and I kept the statements as I statements. And then another thing too is if a student should happen to break your agreement and you have consequences that are written into your technology agreement that involve being sent to the office or involve a suspension or involve the administration in any way, make sure that you have met with your administration and they are aware of what your technology agreement is. There's nothing worse than saying that this is going to happen, sending a student to the office, and then the administration has no clue why the student is there or even what your technology agreement says. So those are just some tips to keep in mind when you're making your technology agreement. So I'm going to have you take a look at a sample technology agreement. And even though this agreement, it does have a lot of will nots in it, The I statements in it are great, and also it is a very simple agreement and to the point. Those are some of the things I really like about it. And so I'm going to have you take one of the I will not statements, and I'm going to see if you can turn it around to an I will, or what the student can do statement. Okay, digital citizenship. This is also important to do. If you are going to be implementing technology in your classroom, do not feel that somebody else has already talked about digital citizenship with your students, or don't think that the computer teacher in elementary school did, or the English teacher who's taking their students to the computer lab did. If you're going to use technology, just assume that it's your responsibility to talk about digital citizenship. And this is very important because, digital citizenship is, first of all, technology is in the students' lives, and it's going to be in the students' lives. It's not going to go away. And kids are no longer just consumers of technology or online content. They're creators of it too. And just like students are expected to be good citizens in their community and school, they need to understand that they also have an online citizenship responsibility. And so digital citizenship also doesn't have to necessarily be taught as a standalone unit, like, okay, now we're going to learn digital citizenship. It's actually very easy to interweave digital citizenship into the activities that you're having your students doing with the technology. And then what's cool here, I have a few sites that I'm listing, but you do not have to reinvent the wheel to teach digital citizenship. There are tons of free lesson plans and videos available, like commonsensemedia.org has a full digital citizenship curriculum. Edmodo also has a free starter kit for digital citizenship if you look under publishers in Edmodo communities. And then cyberwise.org also has an awesome website. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of time here, and you could take a look at this video about what is digital media, and then take a look at the two websites, commonsensemedia.org and cyberwise.org. All right, so a big part of managing the technology in the classroom is keeping the students on task and not distracted. And even though it can be pretty pricey, I cannot emphasize enough the value of having some kind of management software that allows you to see what your students are doing on their devices as well as remotely control them. In my classroom, I had a software by Apple called Remote Desktop, and let me tell you, this software was a complete lifesaver. I could easily see if a student was off task, and I could send them a private message, saying, hey, I can see what you're doing, get back on task. I didn't have to embarrass them or anything. And then another thing that was really helpful too, in fact, this is a screenshot here, but I would project the software management over onto my active board, through my LCD projector. And so even though the screens were not big enough for everybody to see exactly what was going on, the nitty gritty detail, the students could see in general what each other were doing. And this was really great because it created an accountability there, because the students knew that they had a constant audience, that in a sense the other students in the class were their audience. And so this was a great management tool. It's having this management software, being able to see what the student is doing, and then projecting the student desktops out onto the through the projector onto my active board. All right, and here are there's a lot of remote device management systems out there for you to consider. There's all kinds of pricing. Some of them, actually most of them, are very, very expensive. Try to find one that's going to be effective, easy to use, and does not require renewing a license for thousands of dollars every year. And just, here's a few. Take a look at them and kind of, go through them. I know right now we use Meraki for our iPads, and Meraki seems to be working very, very well. iTalk is a free management system, and I don't have experience with it. I don't know how good it is or how easy it is to use. But here's some other ones. There's NetTop My Vision, Net Support Manager, Apple Configurator, which is an app that you would have on a device that you can manage the other iPads with, and then remote desktop. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time and just glance at them. Again, you don't have to make a decision now. Just glance at them and be aware that they are there. Okay, so I mentioned buying things to protect my devices, and there's a lot of incidentals that come with having technology. You want to purchase apps, there's software, there's cords, cables, peripherals, there's cleaning products. You want to keep your devices clean, you want to keep the screens clean, or if you have earbuds, you want those clean. Sharpies to number things. So there's all kinds of incidentals that you need money for. And for me, I was very fortunate in that I had an administrator that was very, very supportive of my technology vision for my class. And so he supported my fundraising ideas. And I was very grateful for that. I do suggest that you go and talk to your administrator before you do any fundraising and get their blessing. And so for me, I would do all kinds of things. I would sell fruit snacks, licorice, pens, pencils, earbuds. I also ran a Mac Attack Club at lunch, and from this, the students would go out at lunchtime and they would take pictures and videos, and then bring this back to me, and I would create an annual DVD yearbook that I would sell every year. Another idea is you could set up an area for buddy pictures at school events or dances, and then the students prepay for the prints, and then if you take that to stores like Costco, they charge just pennies for photo prints, and so that makes a really nice fundraiser. And there are all kinds of ways to raise money for technology. I'm going to have you link to an ebook called Kid Friendly Fundraising Ideas from A to Z. And so I'm going to have you check it out. And it looks like this right here. And it's kind of like it's a slide share. And so they have some great ideas in there that you can take a look at. And then another thing too is if you're looking at getting a grant, I know that most grants really like to see that the school has tried to put forth effort into raising money for whatever it is you want the grant for. It looks better when you on your grant saying, oh, well, we raised this much money, rather than just saying, give me money. So I know a lot of grants really like to see that schools are trying to put forth effort to fundraise, and that they're serious about getting these things and not just asking for the money. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at that kid-friendly fundraising ideas. So we've talked about numbering devices, protecting them, documenting problems or information about them, picking apps and updates, setting up your classroom space, rollout strategies, remote management software, and fundraising ideas. But out of all of these things, actually using the technology in your classroom for learning is what is the most important. And I want you to watch this video on technology integration. One of the things that we do not want to happen is we don't want to have that laptop or device, be more than $1,000 pencil, or, just become $1,000 pencil for note taking. So take a look at the video. And I love this quote here. It's the pedagogy, not the technology. Technology should always be at the service of pedagogy. And I really recommend before considering buying any classroom technology, there needs to be a purpose for it. All of us have seen so many times where thousands and thousands of dollars are spent and the cart is put before the horse, so to speak. And in my opinion, this is probably the number one reason why so much technology ends up in that quote unquote boiler room. The technology ends up being purchased without a purpose. And even though technology is becoming increasingly common in classrooms and learning environments, it's often used to present or consume information. And when you really think about that, what I just said there, that most of the technology that is being put into classrooms is used to present or consume information rather than transform learning experiences. And to use technology effectively, We need to learn how to implement it so it transforms learning experiences. And so for this last section of the workshop here, I want to talk about using technology for learning, and that also happens to be one of the 6 dimensions. So, according to our competencies, students are using technology for learning when they directly complete all or part of an activity using the technology. And they control the technology themselves. In other words, technology use is student centered. It's not a teacher using the technology like a PowerPoint to give lecture notes. Um, so, we're going to go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into this dimension so we really understand how students can use technology for learning. When looking at the dimensions, use of technology for learning is really a foundational dimension that promotes and supports the other dimensions. For example, using technology can help students collaborate or communicate and express themselves in ways that weren't possible before. But 2 very powerful uses of technology is when it supports the dimensions of knowledge construction and real world problem solving. And here, I'm sure you can recognize Bloom's taxonomy, but it's really neat how there are so many similarities between advancing to the next level of Bloom's taxonomy pyramid and advancing to the next level of our use of technology for learning dimension. So, using the technology happens when a student uses it to directly to complete all or part of a learning activity, and that's like your base level. For example, when a student uses software like Word to edit their paper and make changes suggested by the teacher, then that is just your basic student use of technology. But moving up to the next level, knowledge construction occurs when students generate ideas and understandings that are new to them through interpretation, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation. And so technology supports knowledge construction when the technology supports the learning goals. For example, when a student uses a simulation to gather data, then analyzes that data with an Excel spreadsheet. That is using technology for knowledge construction. Now, you can go up even more than that, the next level, and let's say that simulation is of something that cannot be directly observed, like the formation of stars, and you have to have that technology is required, then we have moved up one more level. When students are designers of technology products that others can use, then technology is supporting real world problem solving and innovation. And so we have gone up to the top level of technology use. And one of the things is there has to be an authentic audience in mind that that product is designed for. So, for example, students use the internet to research and communicate with local food producers. And then let's say they develop an app to help families in their community and make more local choices when they buy their food. So that would be an example of students designing a product using that technology, and it's a technology product that they designed, and they have a specific audience in mind that they designed that product for. So while integrating technology into your lessons, ask yourself, will my students be passive consumers by using this technology? Are they active users, or are they designers of a product for an authentic audience? With this technology, am I giving my students a voice and empowering them so they can change their environment? And I'm going to have you watch this video, which is called An Introduction to Technology Integration. And then I want you to answer the question for me, how do you want to integrate technology for learning in your classroom 5 days from now, 5 weeks from now, 5 months from now, and 5 years from now? So that is our Effectively Managing Your Classroom Technology workshop. And in closing, I want you to remind you about our Pinterest board resource. Also, I want to remind you that this is posted on YouTube as well as a slide presentation with the links if you want to go back through anything here again with the Ed Puzzle interaction stops. And so here's our Pinterest board right here, and there's all kinds of resources here for us. And thank you so much for joining me today in effectively managing your classroom technology workshop. I hope you learned some ideas and strategies that will be useful for you. If you would like to learn more about being a 21st century educator, you can visit our website at wcsd21.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Pinterest. And if you could go ahead and please indicate that you have read this disclaimer at the end of our Edpuzzle interaction here, that would be awesome. Okay, have a good day.